Hi, Ed. Oh, I've got two for you.
Yeah, we've got your curtains and you. Oh,
Hi.
it's these young people who don't know how to use IT properly. It's incredible.
Uh, Hello and welcome to the LibDem podcast. We're here with a very special episode via Zoom. Not only have we got our ever-present Richard Kemp, but we are delighted that the acting leader, Ed Davey, has been able to join us. Thank you very much, Ed. I know you must be incredibly busy, but we really appreciate your time.
Thanks for inviting me, John. And to be with Richard Kemp is a real privilege.
Well, that's not the easy thing. The fact is, we don't normally let Southerners on, Ed. It's Northerners we really like.
Listen, I came up to Liverpool the other day, and I promised to do a fundraising dinner for you. So less of the gal's cheek.
Well, we've got lots of questions for Ed brought in from people who have commented on our social media pages, but actually we can't go anywhere else but start with coronavirus and the latest goings on from the top of the party, really, Ed. So do you want to give us a little bit of a brief? I mean, this is going to go out pretty much straight away. So at the moment, Boris Johnson's still in intensive care, but how's that affecting your role and what the MPs are doing?
Well, throughout this crisis, we've had a very measured tone because I think it's important that we do recognise as a party this is a national crisis. And rather than scoring party political points, we've reached out and supported the government in many of its measures. Obviously, its core messages about people staying at home and so on. And that we've had to take some difficult decisions. We had to support their emergency legislation with some real draconian powers, although we obviously we're really keen for them to be reviewed as quickly as possible and for those powers to go as soon as possible. So we've been supportive. However, we try to also do our job as an opposition party in raising the questions that the public wanted answered. So we have challenged the government on things like the PPE kits. Munira Wilson's been fantastic on that, and also on issues like testing. So there's been the health issues, and we've been raising as a party social care, which we think hasn't had the attention it deserves. And Richard has done a lot of work on that too. And on the economic side, I've been leading on the self-employed and indeed employees and businesses. So while the government's done a lot of good things, and we've got to give them credit for that, you know, on the furlough scheme for employees, there's nothing for new starters, people who change jobs between February and March. For the self-employed, the newly self-employed aren't getting a look in. There's problems with people who have incorporated as self-employed who aren't getting any help at all. And the banks, honestly, shocking. They're not getting the loans out anywhere near quickly enough. And given we bailed out the banks in 2008, I really think the banks should do a lot better. And I've argued that the British Business Bank, which Vince Cable set up, that is accrediting the lenders for the government scheme, they should bring in alternative lenders and the fintech who are much smaller and agile and then get the money out. So I'll shut up now, but we've been asking lots of questions while trying to be supportive of this national response.
I think that's the line being taken by local government, isn't it, John? I've come across no Lib Dem councillors having a go at their local council. In Liverpool, we're backing the mayor. We're not best mates, but this is incredible times, and the importance is to come together and be a responsible opposition in terms of presenting new ideas and appropriate challenges. But Ed, you've got a particular problem because you're a carer too, aren't you? How are you being the national leader of a party from your back room?
Well, I'm proud to lead the party at this moment because we've seen a responsive attitude at local and national government. And I think some of the things which maybe talk about in a bit that Lib Dem councillors are doing are just fantastic. But you're right, Richard. I have a disabled son. He's 12. His name's John, adorable little boy. He has an undiagnosed neurological condition, which symptoms of which is he can't walk and he can't talk. And so in normal days, I massage him about 6 o'clock in the morning and work with my wife to get him dressed and fed because he needs 24/7 care. And that is challenging. And while I'm at home all the time, I'm obviously able to do a bit more looking after John. And you know, his teachers that normally come in, his physiotherapists, his speech and language therapists, his OTs, they're not coming. So we've got to try to replicate some of the care that they give. And we have a 6-year-old daughter as well. So ordinary childcare. So if you're a parent with young kids, I have to say this lockdown is particularly challenging, even if you haven't got caring issues like my wife and I have.
Yes, yeah. I can't cuddle my grandchildren, but the rest of the time, Erica and I are having an easy life, I'm afraid. We'd like it to be harder and be able to do more for our grandchildren, but we're all locked down appropriately. And John's got a dog the size of a cart horse, haven't you, John?
I have. I mean, he doesn't need as much care because he just kind of is happy with a sofa and a bit of sun. But it does raise the fact. I mean, my father's been ill. Another thing about the isolation within families as well. Just not because my dad is hopefully going to come out of hospital this weekend, but we're not sure how we're going to get to him, how we're going to look after him, who's going to look after him. And we talked about the strains on the social care system. These kind of vital lifelines that we've kind of relied upon, whether that's grandparents or from your county council, etc., they're not there or not functioning as well as they should be at the moment. It's very difficult for families.
Yeah, and the care sector and issues around care is something I was actually talking a lot about before this coronavirus came on. Issues around care for the elderly, issues around care for the physically disabled, adults and kids with special education needs, people with mental health problems. I think as a society, we haven't got care right. And if anything, this crisis has shown we need to be far more radical in reforming our care systems. That absolutely has to be built on local care systems, with the local authorities working ever more closely with the NHS. I mean, Liberal Democrats have campaigned for years for a proper integration of health and social care. Boy, if that had happened, this would be an awful lot easier to manage this crisis if Liberal Democrat policy had been implemented. So I hope that strengthens our belief that we need to champion the care system and champion real reform.
Yeah.
And I think go on, Richard.
No, you go.
Well, I was going to say, it kind of leads on to the question Richard posed about what are councillors doing and what are they. I mean, you've talked about, Ed, about how you kind of being a critical friend almost to the government at this time. And we're having the same issues on a local level. For example, planning decisions now in Preston are being completely delegated. There will be no public oversight by councillors at all. And whereas that is extremely worrying, and I've actually talked to the Labour cabinet member as well, who isn't exactly fond of what's going on. You can give officers a little bit of leeway, but eventually, if this is going to last for weeks, months, maybe even a secondary peak, we need to get the systems in place to adapt to issues like this.
John, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the legislation has gone through to enable decisions, and it went through last Saturday. And I think we've got to get used to virtual politics. And, I've been calling for an early recall of Parliament on a virtual level, phasing it in, but just getting going. So I've called for a select committee on coronavirus, chaired by the Leader of the Opposition, Mike Keir Starmer, with representatives from all parties, to be able to quiz ministers, officials and experts. And that's what I think the public would like us to be doing. And on a local level, I don't see why councils can't become virtual councils. The technology is all there. I mean, look at this technology we're using now. Everyone knows it can be done. I've actually spoken to people at Tech UK. Is that your dog, John?
It was. I'm just going to mute it. I'm going to mute myself because a delivery guy's just turned up to the door. So you carry on, Ed. I'll just mute it so you don't hear my dog barking at him.
Well, I've spoken to people at Tech UK who represent nearly 1,000 high-tech UK companies, and they say they could do this tomorrow. It's not difficult, and we should press on. And I think, we have to do it now, because whether you're at a council planning decisions, but frankly, all the care decisions, the issues working with the voluntary sector and so on, we need some scrutiny, right? I mean, whether we're in government, in power in the council or in opposition, we work together and we ask questions, we debate. That's the way through. But I'm really proud to be leading a party where we've got so many local councillors and local councils doing some fantastic things. I mean, I'm particularly proud of what the Lib Dems have been doing in York with the leader there, Keith Aspden, who's set up a £1 million business fund. They've given a rent holiday to loads of the commercial properties they own. They've given council tax relief. go down to Chelmsford in Essex, you've got Stephen Robinson there, they've done a really sort of comprehensive, holistic package for people in need, not just food, advice and guidance and care, the whole works. And I've heard stories of some of the councils, Liberal Democrat groups, using the advice that has come from the task force that I set up, the Coronavirus Community Action Task Force, to give guidelines to local campaigners. And in Hull, classic Hull Liberal Democrats, they've made more telephone calls to elderly people and vulnerable people than any local party. So I take my hat off to Kingston upon Hull. All I would say is that Kingston upon Thames Liberal Democrats are third in the country. So we're making lots of calls to our vulnerable residents too.
Yeah, I think there are two things that we've got to think about what happens during this time, because there are some good things happening that we now need to build on. As a society, we have to ask the question, do as many people need to commute to work every day as has been hitherto? 25 years ago, we were talking about an office-less society. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think it should happen, because we do need to meet. But why can't people who normally commute 5 days a week just commute 2 or 3 and work from home the rest of the time and then in with their communal activity? But it's also made me think, and we need to come back to this another time, about how we run our party, which is very central London-centric. So we always have to have policy meetings in London, rather, so that the MPs and the peers can come to them. Well, any of us could chair a policy discussion on housing from anywhere in the country, and the MPs, like everyone else, could join in at the right time.
Can I say, I second, third that. I think it's critical. It will save money. It will save carbon emissions. It will save time. What's not to like about it? And, you know, I've been on 2 Zoom federal board meetings, the Federal Policy Committee and the federal board itself. And, you know, there's lots of people on it. I didn't see any real difference, to be honest, except that I could do it at home and I could have a cup of tea that I made myself, you know.
Yeah,
and I think that leads us naturally onto something that obviously was highly controversial, was the deferment of the leadership election within the local party. It's probably what most people have commented on, saying, okay, ask Ed, why are we doing it? I think there's some people who think that this is of benefit to you, Ed, because obviously they think because you're acting leader, this is of, but I mean, what's your opinion on it, Ed? What would you like to see it reviewed in the autumn? What's your thoughts?
Well, I certainly wasn't expecting that decision. It took me completely by surprise. Clearly, as a candidate, I hadn't been involved in that decision. That would have been wrong, so I wasn't. People asked me my view, and I said, actually, I think the federal board should defer taking a decision, so we had more information about the virus and so on, because it didn't have to take it when it did. But, you know, I respect the board. They took the decision, and it's not really for me to question that democratically led body. They're accountable to the membership and the chairmanship of my co-leader. If you want my personal view, I hope that this can be reviewed. You know, I don't want to influence and try and push the board around. It's for them. They are a separate body, separate from the MPs. But I know, I think it's fair to say that most, if not all, of the MPs would welcome a review of this decision in due course. And I think there's plenty of reasons why. I mean, this is exceptional circumstances.
Yeah,
things can change. And so I hope the board will look at it again. I'd say it's up to the board. And I'd say this also, that while I think they were right not to want to hold the leadership elections in the middle of the pandemic, I think that would have looked wrong. It would have looked like we were talking to ourselves when there's a huge crisis out there. People need our help, right? We need to lead at our local level with our community politics as well as our voice at national level. So I think they were right to worry about holding it during that. But I do think ultimately, given the world is going online, given we're calling for an online parliament, online councils, that if we have to, at some stage, we might have to hold the leadership election online. So I guess if I have a message without wanting to interfere, because if I interfere, I'll be criticised.
Yeah, we'll pile in on you, Ed. Don't worry.
Do I think it should be reviewed so it can happen more quickly? Yes. Should it happen after this first wave rather than during it? Yes. But should we be ready if there was a second wave to run it online so that there aren't any further delays? Yes.
And can I just come in, Richard, before you come in, Richard? Because what was interesting, I mean, during the last leadership contest between you and Joe, it was very interesting because, I mean, other than the hustings, there isn't much face-to-face, person-to-person contact between you and the electorate anyway. Most people will vote online. Those that don't still get the paper ballots and the paper literature, which would still be able to continue as normal at the moment anyway. I'm not sure what the big problem is with having a leadership election right now under the way we did it last time almost. The only thing that has been said is the strain that would be on candidates like yourself, Ed, and your staff, whether you could do the campaign you would want to be able to do.
Well, I hadn't been seeing it through that lens, to be honest. I've been seeing it through the lens of what the Liberal Democrats, as a important voice in British politics, at local level and national level, should be doing in the middle of a national crisis.
Yeah. I don't think anyone.
I genuinely worry that should be our top priority.
Yeah.
And I think it would look really odd, and I'd be quite worried of the message we were sending if now, the peak of this crisis, the peak of uncertainty, we say, oh, no, we're going to face inwards. The party in this crisis, and more generally, has to face outwards. Yeah. We have to talk to the concerns that people have.
Yeah.
And not.
And I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone has really said about doing the election now. I think most people are wondering why it was that it would have to be 14 months before we actually have it. I think that was the main. I mean, nobody. I haven't heard anybody suggest that actually we should be getting on with it in May at all.
Well, I actually have, John.
Right.
So, and I heard people suggesting it should be brought forward, which I thought was nuts. But listen. Yeah. Can I tell you, people say this is in my advantage. I don't think it is at all, right? I don't know about you, but I've been around the party for quite a few years. I joined in 1989. Obviously, I'm a young spring chicken compared to Richard there. But, you know, I've been in the party for a long, long time. I've served under many, many leaders. And leaders tend to get it in the neck. And therefore, being the acting leader isn't always an upside. However, let me say this. I think we can't wait too long to settle this question. I would rather be a leader with a mandate, with a little girl. Are you going to come and say hello? Yeah.
It was almost like the BBC News thing again. She's going to come in dancing in the background.
You know, it's quite important for a leader to have a mandate.
Yeah.
And to try to be an acting leader without a mandate for that length of period is, I consider, to be quite challenging. Yeah. And we've got a vital set of elections next May. We've got the Scottish elections, the Welsh elections. We've obviously now got the mayoral elections in London, but we've got these massively important council elections across the country. Yeah. All the elections were postponed from this May. The county council elections, the police, crime and commission. I mean, huge. It's going to be the biggest set of elections ever in between a general election. Yeah. And I think having the leader in place at least several months before that makes political sense to me.
Yeah, I think, Ed, you'll find that that's the party's viewpoint. I know no one who wants to do it now. There may be some, there are always some in the party our sides who do. What rankled with people was the decision that they will definitely do it after the May elections next year. I think if they'd have said, we can't have it now, we're going to review it every 2 months, look at the circumstances pertaining in the environment around us, and work out if we can do as near as possible to a real election, the whole party would have said, right. And as moustached comedians from Liverpool are supposed to do, I suppose we ought to say to people, calm down, calm down, calm down, because I don't do a Scouse accent very well, because there are people that want to put motions of censure to the president, the board. The board, I think, got the wording of the resolution they moved wrong, not necessarily what they would do if circumstances change.
Look, I mean, it's important that I respect the board's decision. I wasn't at the board meeting. I didn't hear the debate. I was surprised. It was completely unexpected. It wasn't the proposals put before the board. It was made during the meeting. And my co-acting interim joint leader, Mark Pack, he and I, need to be seen to work together. So I'm just not going to go out there and publicly say it was shocking, that decision. Yeah. I can understand that in the room, in a debate, they may have come to it. All I would say is that given they know how the Commons Party feels about it, given they know how people in local government, I've seen the resolution from Liverpool, people on social media, I know most of the peers, there is a view, I think, that it should be reviewed and options looked at very, very seriously about running it earlier and, if necessary, online, or more online than it otherwise would have been done.
Just looking.
Sorry, Richard. I think there's probably a consensus there, but I'm concerned that if I say that, they'll do the opposite. So I want to be a little bit careful.
But looking outside this, one of the things that strikes me is that locally and nationally, we ought to be thinking about our policies, because it seems to me that many of the things we Lib Dems instinctively talk about, like community, about local decision making, about clean environments, are all being, as it were, forced on certain elements and layers of government. And what we could be doing, while, for example, the importance of carers are fresh in people's mind, isn't now the time to be using some of the downtime that many people have got to be actually thinking of how do we take the country, our city, Johns County, through and out the other side of this pandemic?
Well, I actually had a discussion with the Federal Policy Committee on Zoom during the crisis to say just that we needed to see this moment to ensure we can answer the question, why the Liberal Democrats? What are we for? Far more clearly and crisply. And we can learn the lessons of this crisis and apply them to our own principles and values to our longer term policy. And the analogy I made was during the Second World War. They aren't precise analogies. But
I wasn't there, by the way. Could you just note that?
Nor was I. During the Second World War, Liberals got together with other progressive politicians, and they, planned the society afterwards. There was the Beveridge Report. There were Keynes and Beveridge and other Liberals working with people in the Labour Party and some in the Conservative Party to think about things like the NHS, the welfare state, big, big things. And I hope we could do something similar. I think, a massive reform of the care sector, I think, is critical. I think empowering local government. I mean, we are the champions of local government, aren't we? Our community politics, which is needed in this crisis more than ever. That's why I set up the coronavirus community action task force. And we obviously need a pet policy for John. But, seriously, these lessons we're seeing, the importance of local government, the need for reform in care, are two big issues. But you can go much more widely than that. I think this has uncovered deep inequality in our society, and the need for a big, big push on social justice. So the gig workers, the contract workers, the poorly paid care workers, by the way, who are mostly women, disproportionately from the Black and ethnic minority community, lots of immigrant labour, they're really poorly paid. We should be valuing them and really speaking up for them. And in the context of a social justice agenda and a reform of the welfare state. Back in 1990, I was the party's economics advisor. I helped write a paper called Citizens' Income. And Citizens' Income was put into policy some of Paddy Ashdown's ideas about treating everyone as a citizen, not as a servant, not as a consumer, but as a citizen, and valuing that citizenship. I think that notion, which is then was called a basic income, is often now talked about as a universal basic income. That is an idea that we should explore again. And I've actually been on a number of cross-party discussions about that issue. So there are some big policy ideas here, some real visions which are deeply liberal, which I think we should champion and work during this process. So we come out of this stronger, clearer, and frankly, more able to get our message over.
And just because we've only got about 5 minutes or so left, so we've seen today huge economic figures coming out from Germany and France with their economy really shrinking. I mean, France, the worst quarter since the Second World War. Do you think people will accept just carrying on as normal? Or do you think there has to be something huge and fundamental to change in British society?
Well, I've been arguing for a long time for a massive reform of capitalism. And I think that needs to happen for many reasons. I've talked about it in respect of climate change. I call it decarbonizing capitalism because, it's wrong. It's just wrong that banks and stock exchanges and pension funds don't have to make their investments taking into account climate change. It's just wrong. I mean, laws to say that. And equally, we've got to reform capitalism so that businesses have to behave responsibly. I mean, I'm pretty cross with the banks. I said this earlier, that, we bailed them out to tens of billions just over 10 years ago, and they're not helping small businesses now. That's not responsible capitalism. We need to have a framework where people are forced to take account of the wider society. And then you bring that down to the welfare state and labour market. So, I think this is a really big agenda, John. I actually think that agenda existed before. I don't think we should make the mistake. This is all response to coronavirus. I think what the epidemic has shown is it's uncovered a lot of the problems that were already there in sharp relief. And what we need to do is to expose that and to argue that and to move the dial very significantly in a liberal, progressive way.
I think
Go on, Richard.
I think you're right, Ed. I think that there are all sorts of things that we and others want that we can now accelerate based on the experience of coronavirus. When I look at the community activity in Liverpool, it's always been strong, but we had to close our volunteers hotline because we had too many. I've had through my own door 3 things from neighbours, which they're circulating widely, not just I'm old. Can we do your shopping? Can we help you? I just think that there are so many good things. I was talking to someone the other day, remotely, safely, who we have some lovely parks, and I haven't been in one of our parks for years. Well, let's build on the goodness of the coronavirus. And
that open space piece, there's so much that is Liberal Democrat about it. Your local space, the green space, a space that helps people with their mental health, helps them with their exercise, and actually is an issue of social justice. Now, I and my family are very fortunate. We have a garden. We can go and get fresh air safe, with no restrictions. I found it really worrying that there were suggestions, and it's happened in a few areas, of parks being closed. We obviously have to respect social distancing. Of course we do. But the idea of closing parks when people are cooped up in overcrowded accommodation, with often with young kids with not a lot of money, I mean, what is that doing to people's health?
And mental health in particular, Ed.
Exactly. We have to have those spaces open and available to everybody. And yes, there needs to be properly regulated in this particular moment. But to close them down is just wrong.
And on that, unfortunately, we are coming near the end of our time with you, Ed. I mean, we had so many more questions to do with housing and Brexit and how and what way it's going to. But we'll have to do more podcasts in the future because we had absolutely loads of people wanting to talk to you about all sorts of different issues. But all from behalf of me and Richard, we just thank you so much for being on the podcast. It means a lot and just shows, we can get the message out digitally.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's such a great experience to be leading the party at this moment. There's been so many fantastic things done by Liberal Democrats across the country, and we probably won't get any recognition from it. That's life. I've put out more press releases and I've had dinners in the last few weeks trying to get into the stories, and we've led on a few issues like self-employment, like the call for a virtual select committee for coronavirus. So we've made some traction. Munira Wilson's been absolutely fantastic, I should say. Yeah. Daisy Cooper's been doing some great stuff. So I think we've been getting some traction. But the key thing, I think, is us all staying safe, staying strong. Can I just also end on a serious note? We've lost a few long-serving Liberal Democrats already. Yeah. Gordon Tunnicliffe, a councillor from Gedling, councillors like Frank Skinner and John Stevens, Honor Blackman, amazing long Liberal campaigner and an 007 star. And I'm afraid we're probably going to lose a few more of our Liberal Democrat family. And so I think we should think of them, and it shows you how serious this is and why we have to stay strong, communicate like this, and try and do things differently to honour those people who've given up.
What a good way to finish, John. And yes, can we come back to you, Ed? We could do one of these. I'll talk to your people, and we'll talk about other issues as well.
So that was our interview with Acting Leader Ed Davey. I do apologise that we didn't get through all your questions. Particularly I wanted to ask him about the housing crisis, what coronavirus means for Brexit, and whether we go into a transition period or whether that will be extended. We did get a bit of a flavour of his vision for what the Lib Dems need to do. I know people had asked me about that, what he wants to see Lib Dems standing for. We also had questions about what kind of difference will it be acting leader to actually being an elected leader. And he gave that answer really. It's about having a mandate. It's about having legitimacy to actually take that forward and be a leader and to grow the party. So thank you everyone for watching or listening, however you're getting this podcast. Please do subscribe, please do share, please do like and comment. Please, put down, were you happy with Ed's comments? Were you not happy? What do you think of his comments about the leadership election? The federal board, he was being very diplomatic and not wanting to tread on the toes of the federal board, but do you think we should be reviewing it? A lot of people online seem to think so, but do you think we can have an online campaign once this current crisis has abated? So really happy that Ed has spent the time to come and talk to us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ed. Do stay safe, everyone out there. Look after yourselves, and we'll have more podcasts coming up. We've got loads in the bag now that we've recorded, and they'll be coming into your podcast providers, and they'll be coming to your feed as normal. So look after yourself, and we'll see you next time.